Hi, so we're here with Chief Mark McBride for a Chief Chat, and we're going to talk about the 2015 crime report, which is actually our 2016 annual report that we just finished up. And we kind of wanted to address some of the issues and some of the stats in this pamphlet that will be available online at a later date, as soon as the city website is up and running. But we just kind of wanted to go through some things and talk about what people will find in the annual report. So I'm going to go ahead and have you kind of explain first what the annual report is, where these numbers come from, and how these numbers are used by the department.
Okay, thank you. First off, we collect reports, or we collect statistics on a daily basis, and they're reported to the state. And the state compiles their numbers according to what the FBI requests. And those are usually released about July of each year. And then the FBI compiles all the statistics from all the states and all the surrounding agencies and releases their report in October. And from that, we're able to then look at the benchmark cities across the United States, which are cities 50,000 to 100,000 that belong to this group. And we do some comparative data for our annual report just to kind of see how we're doing it here in Idaho Falls compared to the rest of the nation. All cities are different in their makeup, but we all have the same population base. So all these stats are based on population base and not dependent on your urban or rural areas and your influx of society throughout the day.
Okay. And some of these benchmark cities are actually local cities from Idaho, such as Pocatello, correct? That would be included.
Boise is included.
It would be included in this. Okay. And then kind of explain, can you explain, I guess, what types of stats we're collecting as far as like the types of crimes, those types of things?
Okay. The FBI collects the numbers that are called Group A crimes or Part A crimes, which are the most serious crimes, most of them felonies, but not all of them. They're things that affect your everyday life, because it does include things like simple assaults. It includes thefts, which may be felonies, may not be felonies, frauds, your drug usage, or your drug crimes, which a lot of them could be misdemeanors, just simple possessions. You know, a lot of things like that, stolen property, weapons law violations. So just a combination of, I don't know, about probably 20 different crime categories that they compile.
Okay. And then, so those are the Group A categories, and then there's a Group B categories, correct?
And the Group B categories are less offensive, not as serious, and what they collect in that is just the number of arrests. So it's not a true picture of all the crimes in your communities, but the number of arrests in Part B crimes.
Okay. So just let people know, some of those Group A categories would include everything from robberies to larcenies to counterfeiting, anything like that.
Yes.
And then those group categories are kind of, in our report, are kind of lumped into two different types of crimes. We have what we call violent crimes, mm-hmm. and what we call property crimes. And can you kind of explain the difference between the two?
Well, the violent crimes are made up of the assaults, homicides, to batteries, rape, robbery, those kind of things.
So basically crimes against people.
Yes.
Okay.
And then the property crimes, obviously, crimes against property, thefts, burglaries, things like that.
Okay. That's good to know. Okay, so so let's go back to the stats that we submit to the state, then they submit those to the FBI. And let's specifically look at 2015, which is the most current year that we have.
Correct.
As the numbers for 2016 are still being compiled, and they will come out later this year.
Yes.
So talk about what we saw in 2015 comparative to the other years, and then the other cities, benchmark cities.
Well, some of the things that we put in our annual report, we reported the violent crimes. And overall, we're lower compared to benchmark cities. I'd have to look at the report to see the exact numbers, but we are lower than our benchmark cities, and our solve rate on those are higher than most of the benchmark cities. So overall, we're doing better. As far as the state, all crimes reported, we're the fourth largest city in the state. And we're ranked at about number 16 for crimes reported in the state.
In the whole state?
In the whole state, for all the cities that report in the state. So we're doing pretty good as far as the state numbers.
Do we know how many cities are on that list?
I'd have to look it up. But most of the all the major cities, I mean, I just have really quickly, Meridian, Napa, Idaho Falls, Pocatello, Caldwell, Coeur d'Alene, Falls, etc. But all the regions, most of the major cities report. It's usually the small cities that don't report, like Rigby, Amman doesn't report, things like that.
And just to kind of go back, so according to the reports, so in 2015, we did see 168 violent crimes reported in 2015, which is an increase from the 121 from the year before.
Yes.
Can you kind of explain a little bit about, I guess, the trend that we're seeing and the trend that we've seen in the past?
Well, the trends of the past, not just violent crimes, but all crimes. In the early 2000s, the city experienced over 5,000 PartI crimes that were reported to the FBI. And as you see in the 2015 report, we're down to 3,900 crimes for the whole city. The violent crimes, I didn't compare to clear back then, but as you indicated, they're up a little bit from the year before. Some say significant, but they are up a little bit. But they're still lower than 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. So crimes seem to take a dip and then go up a little bit and then go back down. We've experienced over the last several years continual downgrade in the number of crimes reported.
Okay. And this actually just follows that, I mean, for the last few years we saw a trend that was a decrease, which is actually a national trend that was seen.
Yes.
And then, of course, this year we did see a spike, which is also a trend that was seen nationally as well.
And yes, and I just recently returned from a Chiefs conference, and they've all talked about the same type of stuff that we're seeing here in the state is an increase in crimes reported, and generally violent crimes, but also across the nation we're seeing that.
Okay. And just, I mean, we did have some, anyways, and then you mentioned that as well, is that even though we did see a spike, we're still lower than the national numbers. And just to give you an idea, so in Idaho Falls, 284 per 100,000 crimes would be that number. Nationally, that number is 338
yes.
per 100,000.
Yes. And that national number is just the benchmark cities that we're looking at.
Right, so we're not comparing ourselves to larger cities above the 100,000. These are those specifically between the 50 and 100,000 range.
Yes.
And that includes Pocatello, Boise.
That's the only
any of the cities that, so. Okay. And then also the solve rate is at 68%, which is really
real
good. Because the national average is 50%. Mm-hmm. What would you contribute some of that good solve rate to?
Well, a lot of it's the cooperation of the citizens, and they're being good witnesses, reporting crimes right away and being good witnesses, and then the hard work for our officers. I mean, we've had, as you know, a few of the violent crimes, really violent crimes in our community that have been solved within a day or two. I think in 2015 is when we had a couple of homicides, and within 2 to 3 days we had the suspects in custody on those. And it took a lot of hard work from our detectives and the cooperation of the community.
Yeah, and actually we had 3 homicides in 2015. One specifically was the one that was in Toffice Park, and
yes.
And that one actually was, just to talk about that one a little bit, that one was actually going from not knowing who the victim was to, or his associates, to then 3 days later having an arrest made.
Yeah, that was with a lot of hard work from all the detectives working 24 hours a day for those 3 days.
And like I said, we'll kind of put this out so that people can really kind of look at these. But the report actually goes in and kind of talks about a little bit more about. It does pull out specific crimes such as robbery, ag assault, those types of things, and then does does talk about the clearance rates. And actually, our clearance rates went up from the previous last 2 years by 4%,
Yes.
which is really good. Or, I'm sorry, 6%.